Today I want to go over a little bit before we move on to the new drift of irregular noun forms. Oh, I would say on quizzes, I'm looking at everybody here, I'm not looking at anybody. On quizzes, we're probably not going to do grade yourself anymore. You are all very above board and conscientious about grading your own, but just it takes time in class, and then you check them over anyway, so it takes the time. So that was an experiment, which we probably won't continue to do. But if you're not getting an A or a B on your quizzes, you're getting below a B on your quiz, so below 80%. I recommend, and I strongly encourage you to go to on Wednesday for tutoring. And I also encourage you to, that's a sign that you need to put in more work right now. And if you put in the work now, then it'll get easier later in the term. But if you don't put in the work now, it'll only get worse. It'll only get harder. So, because these are, these two quizzes are alphabet and vowel, so you have to have those before you move on. So that's a sign to you, a little sign. Okay, I gotta set aside some more time. I gotta work more on this. I gotta make sure I get it. And once you do that, then it's an investment that'll pay off later in the term. Okay, and I'm here to help, and Jonathan's here to help. And so if you have any questions, you can also talk to me. I'm happy to answer questions or try to give you strategies. But certainly you should be going, we're making that available every week to spend time with Jonathan and help. So please do that if you're in that boat, which is not everybody. But you find yourself in that position. So let's go look at irregular nouns a little bit, which we didn't get a chance to do last time because we looked at the regular pattern, which is where we need to spend our time and our effort anyway. But as you will have seen from the chapter, there are actually some nouns that don't follow the patterns that we learned. So let's see. Who wants to give this a shot, pronunciation-wise? Who wants to pronounce this word? Eretz. Okay, very good. Very good. You got the accent on the first syllable, right? Clue here that the accent's on the first syllable. I marked that, right? So it's not Eretz, but Eretz. Very good. Two segols. What does this word mean? Somebody else. What does this word mean in our vocabulary?
Land.
Land.
Earth.
Land or earth. Okay. Good. Now, if we take what we learned last time and we apply it here, we learned that the masculine singular has no ending, or it's unmarked. Right? It's actually the masculine plural and the feminine forms that have endings. Masculine singular is unmarked. Do we see an ending here?
No.
No, we don't see an ending. So that would lead us to believe that this is a, what kind of a noun? Masculine singular. Sorry, it's not a masculine singular. It's a feminine singular. It's actually a feminine noun. Another shortcoming of this grammar is that on page 15, the vocabulary. Now, he does start to give you the gender later after this chapter of the noun endings, but in chapter 3, he didn't give you the gender. If you look at third item down on the right, we have Evet, land, earth. It doesn't tell you the gender there. So he tells you the gender of this word in the chapter, and then in subsequent chapters, he does sometimes tell you, not always though. Actually, I don't see him here in chapter 5. It could be that he tells you only when it's not what it looks like. Yeah, it's only when it's not what it looks like. The gender is not what it looks like. So he doesn't give it to you if he thinks it's clear. So that's, in my mind, that's a shortcoming. It'd be nice if he just, in all the vocabulary list, he gave you the gender, so you know. So, but you should watch out for if he gives you a little M or a little F, that's telling you masculine or feminine. And he's telling you, you can't tell because it doesn't follow the regular rules. So going forward from this chapter on nouns, he starts to do that. So back there where Eretz was first introduced, he didn't give it to you. But he does tell you in this chapter that Eretz is feminine. And this is, in a way, departing from what I told you last time, although it doesn't undermine it, but that there's a difference between sex and grammatical gender, or even gender, in the world, and gender in language. So land is treated. It's maybe what we might call a conceptual metaphor. It's treated as a woman. It's personified as a woman, as well as cities in Hebrew are. So Ia would look like a masculine singular. Ia, city. It's feminine. It's actually feminine, and metaphorically, cities are treated as mothers of their inhabitants. So there are some cases like that. That still doesn't mean that there's an inherent relationship between sex and grammatical gender, even though in some cases that's exploited metaphorically in the way that Hebrews think about these things. So there are some times when the gender doesn't match, apparently, what we know about the noun endings, as in this case. We would think it would have a what kind of ending to tell us feminine singular? Okay, and you're right about that. What does consist of?
The vowel in the chet in the end, right?
Not a chet. You pronounced it correctly. Or ah. So it's not a chet. It's a hey. Okay. Right. The H sound. Okay. And it's comets hey. Comets hey. Or what's the secondary feminine ending?
Plural the oat.
Well, it's not secondary, but you're right. The oat ending is the feminine plural. It has a tav on it. That's kind of a clue that tav is a secondary feminine ending. So sometimes you'll have, like in Bott, daughter doesn't have a comets hey. It has a tav, but that tav is a feminine ending. It's a secondary feminine ending. Okay. So a couple of other irregulars. Yod is another one of these, where Yod means what? Hand. Yod means hand. By the way, when we say hand, how much of the arm does it include? Up to the wrist. That's a yod, or that's a hand in English. But yod in Hebrew goes to the elbow. It just shows you that there's overlap in semantics between words, but there's not usually an identity. There's not usually an equivalence between languages. There's often some differences. So that is just one example of that. But yod, it means hand, and the body parts that appear in pairs, that are used in pairs, are often feminine, even though they don't have apparently the regular marker of the feminine, they are. So that's, again, here's a case where, does that mean that paired body parts are somehow feminine? I mean, men have paired body parts too, right? So, or somehow, belonging to women. No, it's not. It doesn't. There's not a correspondence between grammatical gender in an absolute way like that and actual sex. So let's. Another type is with the plurals. So we have one of my favorite Hebrew words. Who wants to pronounce that?
Bott.
Say again?
Bott.
I thank you for that affirmation. I feel very affirmed, but right. I just said Bott, so it's kind of it's in your short-term memory. So you'll get a chance to do that. Yeah, it's I threw you off because I said it's one of my favorite, not my favorite. That's one of my favorite. Yeah. Av means father in Hebrew. And yeah, what's the gender and number here? Masculine singular. Okay, it's not a tricky one. This isn't the irregular. In the singular, masculine, it's masculine singular. Okay, but the plural is irregular. We would think what ending would it have if it was regular masculine plural? Im. Perikut mem, im is the standard masculine plural ending, but the plural of av is avot, feminine plural ending. Okay, so knowing the regular endings will help you with the majority of words. That's why we begin with that paradigm and we learn those standard endings. So it helps you learn the biggest number, the largest number, and usually it will lead you to the correct answer in terms of gender and number. But there are some words that are irregular, as in every language. Hebrew is not particularly sadistic in irregulars. It has actually fewer irregulars than a lot of other languages. But how do you learn this? Well, you learn it when you learn the word. You have to learn that individual vocabulary item, and sometimes there's some extra information you need to learn, like the fact that eretz is feminine, and that av has an irregular plural. So it doesn't become feminine because it takes this ending. It's not. We're not saying that it's feminine in the plural. It's always masculine. So the gender in here is within that word itself, that noun, regardless of taking irregular forms. Does that make sense? So if I'm parsing this or describing this word, I would say this is a masculine plural, according to the gender of that noun, but it has an irregular plural. Gregory.
So a word like yod, which is a pair noun, if you were to go plural, does plural only use the pair plural, or does it use both? Maybe you showed last time that there was the dual ending.
Right. Yeah.
So does that fit with yod, which hands it's a pair? So does the plural of yod become the dual?
You mean yod?
Yeah.
Yeah, yod is the letter, yod is the noun. If it's two, it has a dual ending. If it's plural,
But does yod use both dual and plural?
it could theoretically. There probably aren't very many examples of it, of where one of these paired body parts is in the plural. But you can have either one. So if it's more than two,
Okay.
right? I don't know if there was a pile of hands there, but you can see why that wouldn't happen very often that you're talking about that. So yeah, it can, so you see that, you still have a need for a plural if there's more.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, so you're saying there's a difference between days and 2 days?
Right.
That's basically it, okay.
Yeah, and when there's two, that's when you're gonna use dual.
There was a word in the homework that, so I thought it would be a plural, but it ended up being a singular, so I guess it's irregular, but I didn't recognize it from any of our vocab.
Okay, you
I
wanna
was just
give it
wondering-
to us and we'll take a look at it?
Yes. You want me to say it, I guess? Or?
You wanna come and write it on the board?
Sure.
I'll actually,
Can we
you
do
feel
that?
comfortable taking a pen from me.
Yeah, I'm good. Oh, thanks.
Here, why don't you just show it to me and I'll write it. It's plural?
It said it's singular. I thought it was plural.
Oh, I see. Okay, good, thank you. I'll write that for us. Thank you for your willingness.
My bravery.
Okay?
I think I now realize why I was wrong.
Okay, good, but it's instructive for all of us, so it's good. Questions about the practices are always fair game as we have time in class to bring up these things, because if you have a question, probably others do as well. So, first of all, how I've written this, how would we pronounce this?
Amen.
Where's the accent? Where's the accent in the word?
On the end.
Ah, yeah, that's right. Now, we're going to learn that, see how there are two segals here? And the accent's on the first syllable, and two segals here. We're going to learn that there's a class of noun called segolate nouns. So you hear in that segolate that they have segals, two segals. And so this word looks just like that, but and these words have their accent on the first syllable. Okay, like melech, right, king? Accent on the first syllable, two segals. This is a false segolate. This is a tricky one because the accent is actually not on the first syllable, it's on the last, so you got it, that's right. It's emet. And so that wasn't in the vocabulary list? Emet?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. We'll definitely get it, I definitely get it later vocabulary. So let's analyze this. This ending here, we have an ending, looks like. What kind of an ending is it?
Well, if it isn't an ot, or an e, it's singular.
Okay? Yeah, it's not. Now, you might think of, oh, maybe there's that secondary feminine ending. But it's not an oat, is it? It's not a feminine plural, it's not an oat.
Because it doesn't have the
And it's not an eam, so it's not a masculine plural. So it's not plural, we know that. So what did the keys tell you?
So it has to be masculine singular.
Masculine singular.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have.
It happens to have a tav, but it's not telling us it's feminine. So this word means truth. And so I bet it probably never occurs in the plural. Truths.
Right.
I'd be very surprised if it ever did. So, but even just going with if we're taking our regular paradigm and applying it here, we see this tav, but we need to realize there's no kol and vav. It's not oath, it's just a tav on the end of this word. Does that answer?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, good. Micah?
So there's the secondary feminine singular ending is a vowel and then a tav, right? And so if we were to see that word, we could know it was singular, but we couldn't necessarily know if it was masculine or feminine without knowing the word, right?
Right.
Okay.
You might guess, yeah. Though it doesn't happen that often that you get the tav, it's not common. Just to be aware that sometimes you do. So, good, that's a good example. I mean, another example of these irregular plurals is ia. Ia, we know, is feminine, but it's not, the plural is not iavot, which would be the feminine plural, it's actually avein. operating, so the vowel changes a little bit and has a masculine ending. We still say that's a feminine noun, because it's, you see, it's inherent within the noun, not in the ending. Most of the time, the ending reflects the inherent gender of the noun, but sometimes it doesn't. So that's where you should think. The gender is located within the noun itself, not in the ending. Does that make sense? Okay. Ignacio?
Father, could we briefly just talk about how to rule out the possibilities of it being feminine, masculine, or plural, when we just sort of have to, by elimination, say, oh, this word is a masculine singular, for example, because we don't have any of the other elements. Because that's what happened to me for a lot of words in the first practice here.
Do you have another example that you want to show me, and then we'll look at that one?
Sure.
An illustration.
Sure, I guess this one.
Okay? Yeah. I didn't see it marked there, but that's where the accent is. How would we pronounce this? Yeah, accent on the first syllable. Seifo. Seifo. Seifo is often translated book in our English translations, but it actually means a scroll, which would be, you know, the ancient technology of a book. So this means a scroll. I said A, I'm kind of giving it away, but so yeah. Let's just think of our paradigm here. We have Sus, Susim, Susa, Suso. Okay, this is what we're trying to have in our minds. Okay, and this will be on the next quiz, because this is the most important thing in this chapter. Okay, so if we have that in our mind, whoop, Rahim, you were probably wondering, what are you doing? Okay, so we have this, so these are the endings. So this is singular, this is plural, this is masculine, this is feminine. Those are the endings, okay? So one way would be just to look for the endings first. Now, so I'll give you a different approach, but let's do that. Is there an em ending, masculine, plural? No. Is there an a ending, common say ending? No. Is there an ode ending? No. All I had to do is ask three things. So it has none of those. That means it's masculine singular. Another way, or maybe quicker way, is to think, when we start to think about words in Hebrew, nouns in Hebrew, not always, but well, most of the time, they're based upon three-letter roots. And so if you have three letters without another letter, it's probably masculine singular because there's nothing added onto it. So that's kind of a different way to go about it. Is so we're combining this with our knowledge of these vocabulary items, so that when we see because it's always masculine singular that you learn in the vocabulary lists, that if you see that, just like in the vocabulary list, you could know, oh, it's masculine singular. Doesn't have any endings. So there are a couple different ways to go about it, but basically you want to have this in your mind, and you're applying this in finding out gender and number in nouns. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So really, it feels kind of overwhelming, oh, so many options, but if you take this chart, there are really just a few options you have to go through in your mind to see where it fits. Okay? Yeah. Good. Well, let's move on to the pronouns. Who could give me a definition of a pronoun? I'm looking for hands. I'm looking for yads out there. Richard, what's the definition of a pronoun?
It's a short word that stands in place of a noun.
Excellent. It's stands in place of a noun, or it refers to a noun. That would be another way to say it. So, if I said, Dr. Boersma was our preacher last night. He preached a brilliant sermon. Okay? What's the pronoun in those two sentences? He is the pronoun. Okay? And it's referring back to what? Dr. Boersma is the noun. It's actually a proper noun, right? The name. And so the pronoun helps us to refer back to the noun. And it sounds awkward in English to keep repeating the same noun. So if I said, Dr. Boersma was our preacher last night. Dr. Boersma preached a brilliant sermon. Dr. Boersma was wearing his academic regalia. It's, right? You would notice something strange about this person if I was talking that way, not using pronouns, because usually you introduce the thing you're talking about at the beginning, and then you use pronouns throughout. That's the way we do it. So the he, and also because he is a masculine singular pronoun, it agrees with that noun. Okay? So if I was talking about Dr. Kincaid, I would say she, and then that pronoun is agreeing with the noun that precedes it, to which it refers. You see? So it shows us, that helps us, that agreement shows us the link between the pronoun and the noun. All right, everybody clear about that? Pronouns take the place of a noun, or refer to nouns. And they're usually shorter than the noun, so they're more economical, more efficient. All right, so what I want to do is, let's write out this paradigm, and you could practice with me. It's in the book, but we're going to write it out. Have we talked about person? I don't think we talked about person in here. Person as a grammatical category. We've talked about people, but not person as a grammatical category. Person as a grammatical category is the relationship of the speaker to other agents, other people with whom you're speaking, the speaking situation. Okay? So there's first, second, and third person. And this is how I like to think about it. If I'm talking about myself, no other people are necessary. No other people are involved. Okay? So if I say I'm talking about myself. The speaker is speaking about his or herself. And that's first person. There's one person involved. You see that? First person, I or we. So that's, in that case, it's a group speaking of itself. So the group is like treated as one, as an individual in a sense, right? That's first person plural. First person singular, I. First person plural, we. Talking about ourselves. Now, if I talk to Matthew and I say you, there's the speaker who's addressing another person. Okay, you see, you hear that in that pronoun, that you pronoun is a second person pronoun because two people have to be involved, the speaker and the one addressed. I say you. That's second person, there are two people involved. Follow that? Okay, so that two people assumed by the second person. Now, if I'm going to talk to Matthew about Micah, I say he, that assumes the speaker, the person being addressed, who's different than the subject matter, and the subject matter, he. So he is a third person pronoun. Three people are involved, the speaker, the one addressed, and the one being spoken of. or it was plural, they, this, you know, this group on this side of the classroom, they, I'm talking to Matthew about they. Okay, so it involves the first person, the person speaking, person spoken to, and the subject matter. Okay, does that make sense? So you can think it through in your mind like that. That's how the person works, the relationship of the speaker to the other people involved in the speaking situation. And think how many people are involved. Okay, so I'm putting person up here, third person, second person, first person. In Hebrew, we always start with the third person because it's the simpler form, third person. And in different languages, sometimes the pattern is to start with the first person, like I just did for English. But and then we have number, singular and plural. So now we have these three categories. Last time we talked about gender and number, now we know person. So we're going to write out the independent pronouns in Hebrew. If you have a piece of paper, feel free to write along with me. The third person masculine singular, you see how this chart is working? Third person masculine singular is who? Third person feminine singular is he. And that's why I said last time in Hebrew, who is he and he is she. Okay, then we have the second person masculine singular, ata. And the second person feminine singular, at. This is kind of a weird one because it has this shva here. And it also has a strong dagesh in the tav. But this shva is not pronounced. It's not atta. It's just at. And this is just an odd form, at. So you just have to learn that when you learn the paradigm.
Can you say both of those again? The second person, male and female?
Yeah, masculine and feminine.
Yeah,
Ata, accent on the last syllable, and at.
thank you.
Okay? And then, first person, ani. Or anochi. Okay, so those are all the singulars. Oh, I need to tell you, look at this. C. Anybody know what that is? C. Well, it's in the gender category, isn't it? Because all these are masculine, feminine, and masculine, feminine. C. What's C? C refers to, or it's abbreviation for common. So in Hebrew, you can have a common gender, which doesn't mean both masculine and feminine. It means either. It's a form that can be used both either for masculine or for feminine. And so I is like that. I don't have to specify the gender of I. You could imagine a case where you would. If you were a man, you would say, use the masculine first person pronoun, or woman, feminine, but you don't have to in Hebrew. There's the category of common. So again, it's not both masculine and feminine at the same time. It's either or, a form that can be used either for masculine or for feminine, which makes our life a little bit easier because we have one less form in our paradigm, the common. Let's say these. Let's do some more Hebrew. Let's repeat after me. Who?
Who?
He.
He.
Ata.
Ata.
At.
At.
Ani.
Ani.
You hear that rhyme? Kind of a rhythmic. You could do it rhythmically with the kind of bring in that rhyme there. Hu, he, ata, at, ani. Hu, he, ata, at, ani. Say it with me. who, he, and ha, at, and he. So that's a way to memorize this paradigm and to learn these forms. Coming up with a little rhythm and a little song is one way, it's one strategy to learn these things, okay? So now let's do the plurals. Here. Aim or aima. That's on the first syllable. Third person feminine. Aina, accent on the first syllable. Second person, atem. Second person feminine, attain, or attaina. Right there. And then the first person common plural, anaknu. Okay, any questions about how to write any of these forms? And this is a little bit odd, this slash here, that's basically saying it has two possible forms. But the first one, which means the one on the right, is the more common one. Though, when it comes to these feminines, they're not common overall. There aren't that many feminine, especially second person feminine forms are not common. They just don't, there aren't that many occasions where you use that in the Hebrew Bible. Word in feminine, third person. So let's say these words together. Repeat after me. Haim.
Haim.
Hema.
Hema.
Forgot it, dagesh. Accent on the first syllable. Go ahead and write that in. When I help you out and show you where the accent is, he doesn't put it in his paradigm. But go ahead and put in that accent mark so you know how to pronounce it, where the stress is.
Sorry, Father, but where was the dagesh missing just now? I missed it.
In the mid.
Oh, great.
When I first wrote it, I missed it. So, hemma to be accurate. Hemma. Hear that M? Hemma. It's like two M's. Two M sounds. Hemna. Be after me. Hemna.
Hema.
Atem.
Atem.
Okay, see there's a strong dagesh in these tops here. Atem.
Atem.
Or atena. Atena. Okay? And finally, anachnu. The accent is over that nun. Anachnu. All right, so let's write in the English equivalent of these pronouns now. So third person, masculine singular would be he. Or what? It. Because there's no neuter in Hebrew. So what we would say in English as it could be represented by third person masculine singular. Okay? Here, feminine, third person feminine singular is what? She, or keep those two separate, it. Okay? Second person masculine singular. What's second person masculine singular in English? Don't look at the answer. Try to think of what it would be. Okay, second person.
You.
I'm talking you. Okay? Feminine? You. Nice. Good word. Because we don't distinguish in the second person pronoun between masculine and feminine. Okay? what is the equivalent of ani, anochi? I. Capitalized in English. Okay, let's do the plural. Third person masculine plural. What's third person masculine plural? They. Third person feminine plural? They. We don't distinguish between those two in gender. Second person?
You all.
Okay. In a southern dialect, y'all, which is actually very helpful to distinguish the singular from plural, but I grew up in the north and we said you. For both the singular and the plural, we always said you. So, you or y'all, you all, yeah, you all, in parentheses. How about for the feminine? You all, same thing, it's the same in English. Okay, and then first person common plural, we. All right, so who, he, atap, at, me, hem, hena, atem, atang, anak. So I wouldn't, you can know that there's this alternative form, but if I'm coming up with a little rhythmic song to learn it, I wouldn't add that because it just complicates things. Who, he, me, hema, or we could do hema, hema, hena, atem, atang, anak. That kind of goes together better. But basically, you want to get something like that in your mind, and then you can add some modifications to it. Oh yeah, remember there are 2 forms on this thing, 2 forms on this thing. See how that works? You need to have things like that to help you learn it. It's not enough just to run your eyes over it. You're not going to learn it. So maybe songs and rhythms don't help you. If you're more of a visual learner, then you need to come up with some kind of a visual schema of a pattern in the visual representation of this that allows you to produce this chart graphically. And then over time, it will get embedded in your memory, and you won't have to be writing it all out. So the first step would be, especially if you're a visual learner, and actually even if you're auditory, use your song to write it out on your own without looking at the answers, you see? And when you can do that, you know, and if you take the quiz, there's no penalty for writing out the paradigm on the corner of your page, if you need to, because that's really the first step, is to get that paradigm in your mind. Does that make sense? All right. How are we doing on time? I don't have my,
34 minutes
we have 34 minutes?
left. Yeah.
Oh wow, we're doing well. Any questions about pronouns? Oh, I want to talk about pronouns and sentences. Any questions about these forms of pronouns? All right. Let's look over here at an example. All right, how we might use it. And actually, this is an exciting day because today you're going to learn to read and translate sentences in Hebrew already. We're just a few weeks into the term. All right, with these pronouns and with the nouns you've learned, you're going to be able to translate a Hebrew sentence. Okay, so let's say ani. Let's see how we get. Tata. Okay. Ani, what does ani mean? I? Okay. This one's for Matthew too. What is this word?
That's father right there.
There you go. I, Father. I, Father. This is a Hebrew sentence. Now I told you before that Hebrew is a very compact language, and you're going to be seeing that I'm telling you the truth, that it is a very compact language. I mean, I told you that the subject, the verb, and the object of a sentence in English, which would take at least 3 words in English, can be found in 1 word in Hebrew. We haven't gotten to that yet, but here you see in 2 words a complete sentence in Hebrew. And these simple sentences with the verb assumed the verb to be. In a sentence like this is how we translate it. We first just go word by word. I mean, I, right? We have to do left to right for English. Av, father. Now we can supply the verb to be, which is am in this case. And we're going to learn that we can also supply the indefinite article. So maybe I need to put that in within the parentheses as well. So in a sentence like this, in Hebrew, there is a Hebrew verb to be. It's haya. We're going to learn it. Haya. But in this kind of a sentence, you don't have to put the verb to be. You just juxtapose the preposition and the noun in a simple affirmation. So, I, father, and then we supply am a in English, and now it's a sentence. I have to punctuate it. I don't have to punctuate it in Hebrew, but I do in English. So now we have the sentence, I am a father. This is how you say it in Hebrew. Ani ab. That's all you have to say. Richard?
So maybe I'm reading too much into this, but how would that work then with the divine name being a I am statement?
Yeah. Well, that comes from, the origin of that is from Exodus chapter 3 and God's discussion of the divine name. And actually in that context, it is using the verb haya.
Okay.
When we come to verbs, remind me, and we'll have a discussion of the divine name.
But it's not a play off of this concept.
It's not this construction there.
Okay.
It's actually the verb haya, to be, is used there explicitly.
Well, I thought I was onto something cool, but I'm not.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's explicit. I mean, God's name is very cool, but it's just not this construction. Good. So good. That was a great connection to me. Yeah.
So what would have happened if you had used a to be verb? Like, would a Hebrew native speaker read that like, that's a weird way to write that? Or like...
Yeah, it's just not the way they do it. In a sentence like that, it's, if I tell you, you could have ehya, ani, or something like that. It's just usually used for to say different things.
Okay.
So in simple, you see this is a simple affirmation sentence. And you don't have to use a pronoun. You could say, the man is a father. Aish of. That's how you say that. So, but it's simple kind of sentences where they don't use the verb haya, the verb to be in Hebrew. They just juxtapose the two elements that are being equated with each other. Now I'll tell you. Sorry, Sam isn't here to hear this, but my favorite example of this kind of a sentence is from 2 Samuel, when Nathan the prophet confronts David over his adultery with Bathsheba. So he sinned with Bathsheba and against Uriah the Hittite, her husband. And you remember what Nathan does? He tells a parable of the ewe lamb, right? And there was a poor man who had a ewe lamb, and the rich man came and took his ewe lamb. This is the treasure of this poor man. All he has is this little ewe lamb. He came and took it and fixed it for his guests for dinner. And David is outraged, and he condemns the rich man. And Nathan says, Ata ha'ish, you the man. But not in a good way. Not in a good way. You are the man. So, but it's one of these sentences. Ata, you, ha'ish, the man. You are the man. You are the rich man who took the ewe lamb. You took Bathsheba from Uriah the Hittite. So, but it's Is this ata? We just learned this. Ata, right? You. And then we're about to learn this. We're about to learn this. Ata ha'ish, you the man. Okay, so now you can say this to your buddies. But hopefully they don't look up that verse, you know. So. This would be, so it's you, masculine singular, and then we have the man. But then we supply the verb to be, you are the man. You are the man in the parable who did the evil thing. All right, I think that brings us now to talk about the article. Micah?
Quick question,
Yeah.
sorry. So in English, father can be both a noun and a verb, you know, like I
Yes.
am fathering, I
Yeah.
father a son.
Mhm.
Are there instances in the Hebrew where it's unclear whether a word is functioning as a noun or a verb in a simple sentence like that, or is it always clear that that's a noun and you're supposed to supply the
Yeah,
am a?
it's usually clear. It's clearer than English is.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty clear in a sentence whether father is being a noun, used as a noun or verb in English. In the sentence, there's not a question, right, in context. And same thing in Hebrew. If there's some ambiguity, you know, often the sentence is very clear how it's used. But in Hebrew, the thing is that you could have the same root word that creates a noun and also it can be used to create a verb. But the form that it's put into will be very clear whether it's a noun or a verb. So we haven't got to verbs yet, but the noun's going to follow the noun endings that we're looking at. Verb forms will take those same three letters, but it'll put them in a totally different pattern. It could only be a verb. Yeah. All right. Got some clean board space out here. I'm feeling good for this next topic, which is the article. The article. Okay. What are the articles in English? The. Okay. Any other ones?
And.
What?
That.
That. Okay. I see why you say that. I see why you say it. It's one of my son Andrew's favorite words. It's a really useful word. That. Whenever he points at anything. So that is actually considered a relative pronoun. This is a pronoun taking the place of the noun, but there's a special class called relative pronouns that are pointing words. So this, that, those, these are pointing pronouns. So it's quite similar to an article in that an article is referring to a specific thing. So I see why you would say that. All right, so in English we have the definite article, the or the. When do you use the? I'm not talking about the pronoun the. Okay, I mean when you pronounce this word as the. Do you know that?
Oh, followed by a vowel.
Very good. A lot of people don't know that. You know, you might even actually pronounce it correctly, but you don't know why you do it. But if it's followed by a consonant, in the next words, a consonant, you say the. And if it's followed by a vowel, you say the. Like the dog, the elephant. That's the correct way to say that. So that's how it could be helpful especially in your public reading of Scripture. When to say the, when to say the. Okay, that's just a little bonus here.
We mess it up. We mess it up in choir because we don't look ahead for the word, so we would say the eternal.
Yeah. So,
right.
but being a musician,
Right.
you because it matters how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
But so already, you know, don't say Hebrew. It doesn't matter in real life. There you go. There's some, and even English, it's paying off. Okay. But how about a and? Okay, when do you use a, when do you use and?
Isn't that something similar? What's the and before a vowel? Like
Exactly.
an alligator?
Same thing. You look at the next word to see if it begins with a consonant or a vowel. So, a dog, an alligator. And there's something about putting a consonant, that consonant sound in between, it separates those two vowels, because it's too many vowels. Alligator, too many vowels. And alligator, okay? So, there you go. In English, we have two articles. The definite article and the indefinite article, okay? The is the definite article. It means a specific thing. So if I say the book, I mean a specific book. If I say a book, I'm just talking about a book in general. A book. You see, it's indefinite. It's not pointing at a specific one. So, did everybody follow that? Definite article, specific, indefinite, not a specific. And we have to use one or the other in English. Hebrew has no indefinite article. It only has the definite article. So that's why in the sentence, ani av, there was no article, but I had to translate it into English as a father. I am a father. I had to put that in there. So in Hebrew, if you don't add the article, it's automatically indefinite. And there's only one form for the article, which is when it's definite. So if I have the word sus, the word horse, okay, this is the vocabulary form of it, just the regular form of it, the dictionary form of it. Sus, I don't add anything to it, it's indefinite. A horse. A horse. Now, if I want to make it definite, I have to add the definite article. In Hebrew, the definite article is a prefix. It is added onto the word. See, this is back to that compact nature of Hebrew, or I sometimes call it the Lego block nature of Hebrew. It's these pieces that get put together like Lego blocks. Instead of being separate, like in English, we tend to use separate words for all these things. They actually connect them together. So there's a little Lego block that goes on the front of the word, and it has three elements. It's a hey, a patach, and a strong dagesh in the first consonant. Okay? So, hasus. Repeat after me. Hasus.
Hasus.
Hasus means the horse. Now it's definite because I added on this letter. Now, most of you are too young for this, but have you ever heard of that TV show, The Monkees, with it's a fake band that's part of it? So it's it's before my time too. It's from the '60s, but I used to watch the reruns of that. But they had this song called "Hey Hey We're the Monkees." That was their theme song. And for some reason, I always think of that with Hebrew because I think the theme song of the Hebrews is "Hey Hey We're the Hebrews" because they use "heys" for so many different functions. Hey Hey We're the Hebrews. They love the hey. The hey. Already we've seen Hamat's hey is the feminine ending, right? That ending is just basically a hey at the end of the word. And now we see a hey at the beginning of the word. Ha is the definite article, so it's used all the time. And we're going to see even some other functions of heys being added to the front or the end of words as we go along here. Gregory?
Does that change where the accent is when you add the definite article?
No, it doesn't. The accent still remains on this last, or wherever it is supposed to be in the word, but usually it's going to be the last syllable. Ignacio?
Is the dagesh doubling the sound of the...
Hasus, yeah, hasus. I probably said it quickly, but hasus. It is actually, to be technically correct, hasus.
The shuruk, am I pronouncing that right? The vowel shuruk.
Sure, that's right.
Is that one of the ones that you changed? You said it's O as in snow.
No, that's always oo. So it's the way he says it is
So
right.
that's it's correct.
Hasus, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, the way he gave it to you is fine. All right. So that's pretty simple. You add three things to make a noun definite. You add a hey, a patach, and a strong dagesh in the first consonant of the word. To make it definite. What do you do to make it indefinite? Just leave it alone. You don't have to do anything. In Hebrew, it's automatically indefinite if you don't add the definite article. All right? So now, remember we had that group of letters called the gutturals that are made in the same neighborhood in the mouth, in the back of the throat. What are the gutturals? Who can remember the gutturals? Okay, chet is one of them.
Hey,
Hey is one of them.
Fresh.
Ash,
Resh sometimes. Resh is the guttural wannabe.
Aleph,
Aleph is
Ayin,
ayin. Very good, yeah. Aleph, hey, chet, ayin, resh. I think we got them all. Okay? Now, so the question is, what do you do in this case? If you have a guttural at the beginning, because one of the rules of the guttural that we learned last time is that it never takes strong dagesh, right? Strong dagesh can go in any consonant except the gutturals. So we run into a problem here because, look, we're supposed to add a strong dagesh. So what happens if the word begins with a guttural? Aha. Glad you asked, because there are a couple things that could happen. Okay? One is that it could lengthen the vowel. So in the case of av, that begins with an aleph, which is a guttural. We won't take the strong dagesh. So I put my hey here, I put my patach here, and it won't take dagesh. So if you go to your vowel chart, you'll see that if I want to, this is a short A vowel. If I want to lengthen it, I move up in the vowel chart to the comments. That's the lengthened form of this A class vowel. So I told you, think of that chart as a reference. You want to go, you don't have to learn it all, memorize it all, but you can go back there and you can see how vowels shift, if they lengthen or if they reduce. So it lengthens to a comments, and now I've added the definite article to it. This is called compensatory lengthening. The rejection of the strong dagesh is compensated for by the lengthening of this A class vowel. That's one thing that can happen. Compensatory lengthening. Okay? So, or another thing, that's the word father, another word chet, the word arrow in Hebrew. Chet, let's do this one. This time I add my hey, I add my patach, and then I try to add my dagesh and it just disappears. And I just leave it like that. So now this is called virtual doubling. It doesn't the chet doesn't actually take the strong dagesh, but it's just as if it did. Virtual doubling. So that's easy. We lost one of the indicators for us, but we still have the hey and the patach here at the beginning. Yes?
you probably pronounced it, but how do you say av with the definite article? Is it hav? It just seems
Well, there are two comments here. So it's
ha okay.
ha-av, and you're gonna have to get used to saying a lot in Hebrew, right? Because there's no and they also tolerate multiple sounds they're the same in a row. You can have a word that's all the vowels are in the whole word. So this is just one example of it. The vowels are the same. That's kind of, in English, I think it sounds odd to our ear because we don't have the same vowel sound that many times in a row usually, but they don't mind it in Hebrew. They like that. Ignacio?
How would we know in the second example that we wouldn't do compensatory? That we would?
Yeah, it actually has to do with which guttural it is, and he lays them out in the book. So with aleph, ayin, and resh, it's compensatory lengthening with hand. Okay, the two. I remember these two that look the same. Hand. Okay, then there's virtual doubling. I'm not sure that you need to memorize that. I think you might just need to know. It's usually because aleph, ayin, and resh are probably more common at the beginning of the word. It's often compensatory lengthening. So I think maybe in terms of memorizing, just knowing, okay, what are two things that can happen if it begins with a guttural? Because gutturals don't make strong dagesh. compensatory lengthening, or it could be virtually double, which is that there's just no dagesh and nothing changes. So I'm still looking at the hey and tata at the beginning. So I think that's more economical in terms of what you have to learn than it is, well, I gotta know which letter it is. You would if you were writing biblical Hebrew, you need to memorize which one it is, but since we're reading it, we would probably just say, here are two things that can happen, okay? And then also, if you have a guttural with a comets, then this vowel can become a segul. So har means mountain, and instead of it being ha, instead of putting two comets together, it becomes a segul, so it's he-ha. So this is even harder because now all we have is the hey, but we still have a hey at the beginning, which is a pretty good sign still. But we don't have the pata, and we don't have the strong dagesh of the definite article. So, so I would do it in this order. What can happen if it's a guttural? Well, compensatory lengthening, the lengthening of that pata to a comet. Or it could be you just don't put the dagesh in, and in a few cases the vowel might change. So there's three things that might happen if you have a guttural. All right, let's do some vocabulary with however much time we have left. Any questions about the definite article before we go on? Definite article? Let's do some vocab until we run out of time. Look at page 26. We have our vocab list for this chapter. Okay, lift up the right hand column. Let's pronounce these together. This is one that we've already talked about. Repeat after me. Adam.
Adam.
Means humanity. So man, it should say, I would put humanity as the first meaning of this word, but that's, I think it's, man is being used implicitly for humanity there. Repeat after me. Ish.
Ish.
Ish means man or husband, and then there's no separate word for husband in Hebrew. It's just the possessive pronoun. Her man, or my man is for her. It would be when the possessive pronoun refers to the wife, would mean husband. This is great. These are words we were just talking about in Genesis 1 and 2, aren't they? Yeah. Repeat after me. Isha.
Isha.
Isha. Repeat after me. And this one, the accent is on the bait here. See that blue in the next one? He's telling us the accent's on the first syllable. It's not vayit. That just sounds funny. It's bayit. Okay, so repeat after me. Bayit. Bayit means a house. Typical word for temple in Hebrew is God's house. Bayit. That's bayit. Next word, repeat after me. Derek. That's on the first syllable. Repeat after me. Derek. 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 One time my wife and I were out for a walk and we found a turtle crossing the road. And we picked it up and we considered it our pet turtle for a little bit until we took it to a pond. And I, being a Hebrew student, I named it Derek. Because we found him on the road. Okay, repeat after me. Next column there. Kohen. Kohen means priest. I like that. I like that word too. That's not good in my top words. Actually, one of my brother's sons is named Cohen, and I thought I'd call him Kohen. Because that's where that name comes from. Cohen comes from. Cohen. Repeat after me. Halach. Halach means to walk, or just to go in a general sense. And if you think about this makes sense. In the ancient world, that's how most people got around, was walking. They wanted to go on a journey, they walked. And so, in addition to just meaning the action of walking, to just go, move, and go anywhere, in Hebrew is halach, to walk. Repeat after me. Lakach.
Lakach.
Lakach means to take or seize. Repeat after me. Natan.
Nathan.
Natan means to give. So those are opposites. Natan, give. Lakach, to take. So you could think of them together. Natan and Lakach. Repeat after me. Shama.
Shama.
Shama means to hear. And that's Shemuel in Hebrew, means God hears or God heard. So that hear that Shama at the beginning, Shama, and then El at the end is God. So that's where Samuel comes from. The name Samuel.
The Shema, correct, as well. The
Oh.
Shema Israel.
Oh yeah, very good. Yes, yeah. That is from the first word in that that passage from Deuteronomy 6. It begins Shema Yisrael. Shema means hear, O Israel. Shema Yisrael. So very good connection. That's the same verb, Shema. It's in the imperative form, Shema, in that phrase. And in Hebrew, Shema means not just hear, but to obey. In other words, to listen and respond. So you see see how there's an overlap with hearing, we're meaning hearing in English, but there's also a difference between those two. If you've ever seen semantic domains, like the meaning of a word in one language and the meaning in another language, and how they overlap, but they're not identical to each other. Like this is another example of that. That Shama means more than just to hear, like to register that sound, but to actually act upon that. So thus going back to the Deuteronomy passage in Deuteronomy, Shema, that hearing, is to actually keep the covenant with the God of the covenant. And here we have some irregular plurals. And actually somebody asked me about this the other day, and I said, well, it's got a different plural, it's got an irregular plural, but here we have that. It might have been Gregory who was asking me about it, but the plural of ish is not what would we think it would be. Ishim, wouldn't we? The im, masculine plural. The form of the word changes a little bit to anashim. Anashim. So actually we do get the masculine plural ending that we expect, but the form of the noun itself changes. We have a few cases like that in Hebrew of the irregular plural. It's actually, I was thinking about this next one. So the plural of isha, woman, is not ishot like you would think. It's nashim. This is a case where we have a masculine plural ending in grammar, or I'm sorry, in grammatical gender, but it's actually a feminine plural noun. So remember, the gender is inherent within the noun itself. Because isha is feminine, it refers to a woman. This brings me to a principle, which is that the more common a word is in a language, the more irregular it can be. This seems counterintuitive, but the reason why is because it's so common, everybody uses it. They can stand the irregularity of it because everybody knows it. And the less common a word is in a language, the more regular it should be, because people don't use it very often. They don't know the forms of it, so they use the regular form. So these are very common words. Ish and isha, man and woman, they have irregular forms. So you'll see that across Hebrew, that the more common words tend to be more irregular. Counterintuitively. Any questions? Any questions? So any questions? What are the big things for the quiz? What are the big things for chapters 4 and 5, right? Chapters you've covered since the last quiz. Number 1, the most important thing are the noun endings. That paradigm is really 3 forms, because one of them is no ending, right? But to know that paradigm, that's pretty easy, not too much there. And the second thing from this chapter, two main things are the pronouns, which were your vocabulary from the last one. So it's not only not an addition to the vocabulary. And then the definite article, which is a, a pataf, and a strong diet. Okay, those are the main things for the quiz, big things. And your reading will have it. All right? All right. Good, thank you very much. Just turning your practice. I'm glad you enjoyed that.
That was incredible.
You'll have to share it with Sam because he missed it.
When I said to Sam, I mean it in its original context. Sam, you're the man.
What's that?
You're the man. You're like David, man, you're the man.
Big time.
Big time.
Well, they're rolling in me.
Said big time. Oh, I thought you said big time. I thought he was like big time Bathsheba. Big time.
I liked your sermon this morning, Matthew.
Oh, thank you, Father.
Time for the projects.